he who dwells in the shelter of the Most High. And again there, it shows that when the psalmist was writing this, he was aware that there are many different kinds of shelters. But the psalmist is saying, he who dwells in the shelter of the Most High. That means he who takes a conscious decision to go under the shadow of the Almighty. The Hebrew word uses yashab for the word dwell, and it means he who sits, he who finds a dwelling. In other words, in all the splendor of God, you find a spot to rest in his shelter. But then he continues and says, that person who dwells in the shadow of the Almighty says, will rest in the shadow of the Lord. And that is actually the most important part of this whole scripture. Everything else is adding to that. And so verse 2, he says, I will say of the Lord. So after the psalmist makes a statement about a particular person who has the audacity, who has the wisdom to go and find shelter in the Lord, after making that statement, he says, I will say of the Lord. And I think that is quite important in the how part of trusting God. That when there are moments of anxiety, moments of worry, moments of bereavement, moment of hurt, moment of where you feel that the vision is dimmer, the psalmist says, this is how I trust God. I will say, I speak this way. In other words, he's saying, when you listen to the news and there are so many words that are spoken concerning the virus, and so many words concerning the economy, and so many thoughts, words in your mind that are speaking concerning health, retirement, and all the many things that worry us. And there are words, there are voices. The psalmist is saying, this is how I trust God. Not only think about the goodness of the Lord, but I speak of the goodness of the Lord to myself. In other words, he says, I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge. That means I will not allow my vocabulary to be centered around all the many things that are going wrong. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge. He is my fortress, my God. And then he says this at the end, in whom I will trust. It's a conscious decision to choose to count your words concerning who God is. And the fascinating thing about that is in the words that he uses for my God. It's not the same one that he used up there for Most High. He says, no, the one who trusts in the Most High, well, good for him. But then he says, I will say, the Lord is my refuge, my fortress. And then he says, my Elion. That's the word he uses to describe God. And that means the one who covers me. The one who is worthy of trust. The perfect translation for the word he uses there for my God is equivalent to Adonai, which means God per excellence. And what he's saying is, if you read it carefully, it says, he who sits in the secret place of the Most High will rest, stay permanently in the protection or defense of the Most High. And then he says, then I will say personally, concerning Gabriela, concerning my ministry, concerning my health, concerning my future, I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge. He is my fortress and my most excellent God, in whom I will trust. And when he says this, he goes down to begin to share a few things about the benefits of trusting God. He says, surely he will save your life from the fowler's snare.